Mom, that's my brother. A 6-year-old boy dressed in a perfect navy blue suit said that in the middle of a busy street. And with just that one sentence, the world of a powerful woman came to a sudden halt. New York, a gentle autumn afternoon. Sunlight draped across 6th Avenue like a golden ribbon wrapping around the towering glass buildings. In the flow of people, there was a little boy named Ethan holding the hand of his mother, Madeline Grant, a well-known businesswoman. They had just left a fancy charity gala at the Ritz-Carlton. Ethan was always quiet, polite, reserved. Madeline was the opposite. She moved through life like everything had already been scheduled, with no room for the unexpected. But then Ethan stopped. His small hand tightened around hers, his eyes locked on a corner of the street ahead. There a barefoot boy curled up beside a trash bin, torn clothes, hollow eyes. In his hands a worn cardboard sign with one shaky word, food. Ethan didn't blink, and then he whispered like tearing through silence. Mom, that's my brother. Madeline froze. What did you just say? Ethan looked up at her eyes glistening. His name is Mason. When I was in the place with the green beds, when I was cold and hungry, he was the one who held me at night. Madeline blinked. Ethan, you've never had a brother. But Ethan shook his head, eyes never leaving the boy across the street. I did. Before you adopted me. And when Madeline turned to look again, the boy Mason was staring at her, not angry, not begging, just silent. Ethan let go of her hand and ran, leaving behind Madeline's stunned silence. Mason, he called. The boy looked up. A name broke free from a buried memory. Andy, Ethan, once called Andy, rushed in and hugged Mason tightly. His small arms wrapped around a bony, fragile frame. Dusty, cold, forgotten. But to Ethan, this was the only person who had ever truly held him. Madeline approached, her voice shaking. You two really know each other? Mason replied softly. I used to tell him stories to help him sleep. Shared my porridge, because sometimes the workers forgot. Madeline stood still. Why are you here? Why didn't anyone ever tell me about you? Mason looked down. They crossed my name off, said I had lung problems, said no one would want me. That night in her elegant home office, Madeline made a call. I need everything. My son's adoption records, and any mention of a boy named Mason. 3 days later, a file arrived. Original documents, faded photos, hospital notes, and one line marked in red, Shus Mason James, not recommended for adoption. Reason: weak lungs, not to be disclosed unless requested, and just like that, he was erased. The next morning, Madeline returned to the same street. Mason was still there. A sandwich lay beside him untouched. Ethan ran and hugged him again. No words, only tears. Madeline knelt down beside them. Mason, if you're okay with it, I'd like to bring you home. At least, until we understand everything. Mason looked up, hesitant. Why? She answered gently. Because I should have asked about you, a long time ago. And because my son never stopped remembering you. 6 days later, the DNA results came back. Not related by blood, but bound by memory, by records, by the same forgotten past. Mason didn't speak much the first few days at the Grant household. He would sit quietly near the back porch, watching the clouds, unsure if he belonged. Madeline noticed how he flinched when someone shut a door too hard, how he instinctively checked for permission before touching anything. One evening, Ethan brought Mason a blanket. Not because he was cold, but because he remembered. You gave me yours once, Ethan said, boys, now it's your turn. Mason smiled faintly. It was the first time he allowed himself to. At school, Ethan stayed close to his brother. He introduced him to his friends with pride. This is Mason. He's my big brother. Some kids looked confused. Some whispered. But Ethan didn't care. Neither did Mason. One afternoon, their teacher asked the class to write about someone you admire. Ethan stood up and read his aloud. Some people find their heroes in books. I found mine on the street. My parents couldn't find him, but I did. The classroom fell silent. Even the teacher blinked away tears. Back at home, Madeline struggled, not with the boys, but with herself. She kept replaying the moment the adoption agency said, "He has no siblings." Did I ask the wrong questions? Did I not ask enough? Late at night, she'd sit in the kitchen staring at old files. She started journaling not for herself, but for Mason. To one day tell him, "I didn't know then, but now I do, and I choose you." Weeks turned to months. Mason joined an art class. He painted a mural at school, two boys under a night sky holding hand stars above them. In gold at the bottom, he painted, "No more forgotten names." One morning, a journalist reached out wanting to write their story. Madeline hesitated. She feared the media. But Mason was the one who said, "If it helps other kids not be erased, then yes." They told their story, not for fame, but for change. A week later, new legislation was proposed, Sibling Preservation Act, to require full disclosure of sibling ties during adoption. Mason's name wasn't just remembered. It was written into law. Madeline walks past the living room. Two boys are asleep on the couch. One blanket, one memory, one bond. She places a hand over her heart. Family yet is sometimes made by paperwork. But love rewrites everything.